Welcome to God and Country Biblical Exposition. The big news over the last month has been ChatGPT and AI. As one CEO of a UK technology company quibbed, AI is essentially all I'm thinking about these days. And business leaders are talking about AI, speculating that maybe it's going to be the next big thing like the PC or the cell phones, and then came the smartphones and Amazon and Google. And they want to get in on the ground floor and figure out how they can make some money and grow their business. I suspect they're all going to be very disappointed because AI is not what the media is making it out to be, but we're going to get into that later. First, let's answer the question, what is ChatGPT and AI? ChatGPT is simply a computer program that compiles information from the internet in a way that mimics human writing. What impresses people is that ChatGPT was able to pass the lawyer's bar exam. It can write term papers, resumes, news articles, poems, songs. And writers can have ChatGPT write articles for them to work off of. And then all they have to do is just add some additional information and make their own edits. ChatGPT stands for Generative Pre-Training Transformer. It was created by the nonprofit company called OpenAI, a San Francisco-based software company, which is now owned by Microsoft. And here's an article from Forbes back in January. Microsoft confirms its $10 billion investment into ChatGPT, changing how Microsoft competes with Google, Apple, and other tech giants. So bear in mind that ChatGPT is just one of many Microsoft AI programs. And Google and Apple and NVIDIA and Amazon all have their own versions of AI software, such as Pal-M, Chinchilla, Titan, Megatron. So here's how ChatGPT works. It's all based on statistics. There's no actual intelligence in the program. It simply turns words into sets of numbers, and it goes out on the web and creates huge databases to determine which words statistically should go together in a sentence. Our cell phones already do this in a small way. When they supply for us the next word, you're probably going to type in a text message. And very often, it's correct. I may type into a text, pick up an apple, and then at the bottom, it's going to supply the word pie. Because I imagine statistically that the word that usually follows apple, when preceded by the verb to pick up, is pie. And these statistical probabilities work surprisingly well in determining sentences. Now, there were earlier versions of ChatGPT that didn't work so well, but what makes Generative Pre-Training Transformer version 4 so unique is that it's able to work with incredibly large amounts of information. GPT is called a large language model. Goes out onto the internet and categorizes and gives statistical values to virtually everything written on the internet. And this is called the program training process. Here's an interesting piece. To train ChatGPT version 3, it used 1.3 gigawatt hours of electricity, enough electricity to power 120 homes in America for a year. And it cost OpenAI $4.6 million to train the program. ChatGPT version 4 is able to take in much more information, and it cost OpenAI $100 million to train. The difference by having more information statistically categorized is that ChatGPT 3 failed the lawyer's bar exam, but ChatGPT 4 passed it in the 90th percentile. But here's what we need to keep in mind. It is not intelligence. This is artificial intelligence. The word artificial means exactly what it is. It's fake. It's not real. the program is not thinking. It's only repeating what it finds on the internet, the facts, and the typical syntax of sentences. In that sense, it actually is plagiarizing by failing to footnote. Remember back in high school in English class when you had to write those papers? Even when you paraphrase, putting into your own words something you find in an article or a book, it's supposed to be footnoted. So a piece written by ChatGPT should have a footnote for every word and sentence, but it doesn't. Prime example. ChatGPT can create images, pictures, but it's not really creating pictures. It's stealing and piecing together images from off of the internet. The big photo company, Getty Images, has a lawsuit against one AI company for stealing its images. So again, keep in mind that AI, ChatGPT, is not real intelligence. It's plagiarism, but it's so sophisticated that it fools people into thinking that it's intelligence. Here's an article. Is AI really as intelligent as we think? And this article, despite how the media portrays it, AI is not really intelligent. Here's why. And here's an article from Nature. Why general artificial intelligence will not be realized. Bottom line is we're getting no closer to creating intelligence, but we're getting better at faking it. And that's the point. It's a lie that fools people. Just like those animatronic statues at Disney, it looks like Abraham Lincoln, it moves and sounds like Abraham Lincoln, but it's fake. It's simply entertainment. It's really interesting to me that ChatGPT is based upon statistics and probability because statistics have always fooled people. Like when people play the lottery. They think that they have a chance to win if there's a 1 in a million chance. Or they imagine that if a coin is flipped 4 times and each time it lands heads up, there must be a greater probability that on the next flip, it's going to land tails up. When in fact, the past has no effect on the future, there's still only a 50% probability of it being heads or tails. They publish these lottery win number sheets, the numbers that have won in the past. And people usually don't play those numbers because they think that the probability of those numbers winning is less than other numbers. But no, those numbers have just as much of a chance of winning as any other number because the past does not affect the future. I see I probably already confused you in all this, and that's how probability and statistics confuse people. Mark Twain said there are 3 kinds of lies: white lies, black lies, and statistics. Well, isn't it interesting that statistical probability is behind fooling people into thinking, a computer has achieved intelligence. So there are many articles written about the harm or the dangers of AI. And it's really the low information voters who think that the danger might be that the computers take over the world. Like Cyberdyne Systems in the movies The Terminator or Vicky in the iRobot series. But that's not the real danger. The danger is in fooling people to look to trust AI, to give it more authority than it deserves. Reporters today make the claim that experts say or studies show they do this to enhance their authority, but who are the experts and who writes the studies? Can we imagine a day that people will say, well, ChatGPT says, or some AI computer says, and then attribute to AI some authority or some wisdom? But ChatGPT is only what's found on the internet. Journalists today aren't even getting out of the office much, but they're relying on the internet to write their stories. Even big media outlets will make their major story what's trending on Twitter. They'll give the opinion of trolls on Twitter as if that's the whole internet. We've all read these articles where the authors state, well, Twitter exploded today with such and such an opinion, when it's only the response of a few trolls. And usually the writer is simply trying to find some outrage that agrees with whatever ideological position he's taking. The deception of AI can clearly be seen in all of the media hype we've read over the last month. Quote, ChatGPT embodies more knowledge than any human has ever known. Or this, quote, artificial intelligence will change our world. Quote, those who interact with AI describe their experience in near spiritual terms. It's a feeling of magic. It can perform tasks that have been exclusively in the domain of human intelligence. Quote, it will improve everything in life from medicine to law to government. It may even find a cure to cancer. And this quote, Lee Sedol, one of the world's best players of Go, an ancient Chinese board game, retired from the game after Google's neutral net-based AlphaGo software crushed him in 2016. Sedol said, even if I become the number one, there is an entity that cannot be defeated. The AI program. Now, realize that when we read the media speaking about these things, it's the media hype to get people to click on the article, to get us worked up. In addition, ChatGPT is a product produced by Microsoft. And companies pay PR firms to write what looks like news articles. And then they send them out to journalists to get a buzz about their product or their stock. And media outlets who have to put out dozens of articles every day are more than happy to simply repeat what's sent to them. So let's not be fooled by all of the hype. Much of it is about getting investors to invest in and pump up the prices of AI stock. There's a biblical lesson in all this, and it's really quite prophetic. Because what the scripture tells us is that at the end of this age, in the apocalypse, the world will be deceived by lies. Big ideological lies, disinformation coming from powerful institutions, from the media, from governments. As is pointed out in this article, A Guide to Understanding the Hoax of the Century by Jason Segal. 13 ways to look at disinformation. Some points in the article. Governments manipulate digital information to achieve political objectives and to delegitimize opponents. To reinforce a monopoly on power. This is technocratic informational control. Governments want to use monopolies on information systems to control populations, ultimately to keep themselves in power and to fulfill ideological objectives. One commentator said it this way: we're dealing with a huge block of power centers, all merging together with a new idea that the internet can be used to silence you and control you and take over the information. And remember, every totalitarian state is about control. After the wall came down and East Germany reunited with West Germany, they found warehouses of files. Files that the secret police had compiled on every citizen. And this is the nature of communism. Communist ideologues today claim communism failed because communism didn't have the technology to control. But that's all been changed with the invention of the computer and the internet. With computers, mass amounts of information can be managed, stored, retrieved, and there can be great control. And that's the danger of AI, control. So let's talk about the Tower of Babel. Notice in the Revelation, the end-time world government is referred to as Babylon the Great, the beast coming back to life. And don't underestimate this. Don't miss the lesson here, because in the scriptures, God warns us about the control of man and where it will lead. Genesis chapter 11. Now the whole earth used the same language and the same words. It came about as they journeyed east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they settled there. They said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And they used brick for stone, and they used tar for mortar. They said, "Come, let us build for ourselves a city, and a tower whose top will reach into heaven. And let us make for ourselves a name. Otherwise we'll be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth." The Lord came down to the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. The Lord said, "Behold, they are one people, and they all have the same language. And this is what they began to do, and nothing which they purpose to do will be impossible for them." And so God shut it down. What was the sin here? It's really a juvenile interpretation that supposes they wanted to build a tower to climb to heaven. The sin was in wanting to control everyone under one monopolized government. They didn't want to be scattered abroad, so they decided to create a centralized city for fame and recognition, a capital that would be a rallying point, so they could claim that they were the government, they had the first authority. This tower and the city is something people would look to, respect, fear. This tower and the city would enhance the power, the glory, and the wealth of those in charge. Give them the power to tax. California is having a financial problem because, taxes are too high and people are leaving. People are voting with their feet, and leftist politicians don't want that because evil is always parasitic. It has to always attach itself to the good, and they have to have sheep to slaughter. So they're trying to pass an exit tax. If you leave the state of California, you get taxed. And I believe they've already passed a tax penalty if you sell your home and leave California. Here's one article. Newsom wants to tax Californians after they move out of the state. So why is that? Well, because they don't want people to be scattered abroad over the face of the earth. Because then they can't tax and control the people. God's reaction to the plans of Babel was swift and dramatic. He broke up the people with one of the greatest miracles recorded in the Bible, a supernatural change of the language. Do we realize what it takes to change the synapses and the molecular structure of everyone's brain? So without them even knowing it, they begin to speak a different language. So why such a great miracle? Well, to stop the monopoly of human power and human control, because the consolidation of man's power will always result in evil and the persecution of God's people, because the default position of the human heart is evil. Imagine back in the 1950s if the Soviet Union was able to take over the world. But notice in the Genesis 11 text that even though their plans were an outrage to God, we get the sense that these leaders didn't see anything wrong with their plan. In fact, they probably thought they were doing good by promoting unity. So here we have a lesson that mankind ought to learn and know that he should limit himself. Just because he has the power to do something, just because he has the power to unify mankind, to create a monopoly, to create a control, doesn't mean he should be doing it. But in the Revelation at the end of this age, we read that mankind returns to the objectives and the ideology of Babel, so that the end-time government is called Babylon the Great, the mystery. The mystery is referring to the ideology or the metaphysical principles behind this Babylon revived, rather than referring to the actual location. So the evil in this final world government will be an ungodly desire for power and control. And in this, and by this, the Bible tells us that there will be great deception perpetrated by the powers that be. And this is where AI can play a part. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 11, A deluding influence will fall on the world so that people will believe what is false. 2 Thessalonians 2:9, that is, the one whose coming is in accord with the activity of Satan, with all power and signs and false wonders. The people of the world will adore and worship this center of power. Revelation 13:4, the people say, who is like the beast and who's able to wage war with him? Revelation 13:8, all who dwell on the earth will worship him. Revelation 13:13, and he performs great signs. Verse 14, he deceives those who dwell on the earth by the signs which were given to him. And an image of the beast is made. And breath is given to the image of the beast so that it appears to come to life. Now, the beast refers both to the empire of man or to the Antichrist himself. The word image of the beast, is the Greek word icon. It's something that represents the beast, the empire, and represents mankind. And again, this is an image, an icon of man that appears to come to life and speak. And it's this icon of man that causes those who do not give this icon allegiance all sorts of trouble. It's the icon that persecutes the church. And that's the essence of what's being said there in Revelation 13:15. The image of the beast would even speak and cause as many as do not worship the icon of the beast to be killed. And this icon gives everyone a number and controls who can buy or sell. Will technology play a role in this? Most likely. Because the technology represents the ideas and the values of man. AI and the information on the internet is simply the sum total of human wisdom and power. It's the wisdom of this world. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, the wisdom of the wise and the cleverness of the clever that God sets aside. I don't read Revelation chapter 13 in the framework of the ancient world, people worshiping statues. I read it in the framework of the modern world, where people are worshiping the technology that they've created, the power of man. In the ancient world, the idols didn't speak and come to life. But in the modern world, we do have AI. And by worship, this doesn't mean bowing down before a statue and offering it a sacrifice. It simply means giving it authority, giving it reverence, adoring the work of man. ChatGPT, in regurgitating everything on the internet, is actually 1 John 4. Verse 5, they are from the world, therefore they speak as from the world, and the world listens to them. The internet is the sum total of this world's speech. And all the content, all the emphasis reflects and mirrors the mind of man. Now, as I said earlier, ChatGPT, in its training process, crawls the internet and categorizes and gives statistical values to everything written on the internet, but not really everything. Because programmers found that there is a lot of junk writing on the internet, and so programmers have had to limit and target the content that the program takes in. Now, keep this in mind, because the programmers can manipulate what information ChatGPT or any AI program takes in. And it makes a big difference whether ChatGPT is getting information from CNN or from some conservative news site. I mean, we already know that Google, in their algorithms, which is essentially AI, prioritizes left-leaning news sites. So that if you do a search on a topic, at the top of the search list is always the New York Times, CNN, MSNBC, or NBC, CBS. Never Fox News. Yet Fox News is actually the biggest news outlet. So let's not imagine that AI is unbiased. It only puts out the information the programmers put in. And as AI develops increasingly, just like on social media, the pressure will be from political ideologues and certain disinformation government agencies to censor certain information and certain sources. Here's a prime example. A ChatGPT researcher asked Chat to write a piece about Al Gore's father, Al Gore Sr. And he was a Democrat senator from Tennessee. And in his day, he was extremely opposed to the 1964 Civil Rights Act. He was a segregationist. But ChatGPT came back and said, quote, during his time in the Senate, Al Gore Sr. was a vocal supporter of the civil rights legislation and was one of the few Southern politicians to vote in favor of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Yet again, Al Gore Sr. was not a civil rights pioneer. He was a segregationist. So why would ChatGPT lie about Al Gore Sr.? It's not as if ChatGPT is a registered Democrat. It's not as if ChatGPT has an ideological agenda. Well, a number of years ago, Al Gore Sr.'s son, Al Gore, Vice President Al Gore, gave a speech about his father. And in that speech, he said that during his father's time in the Senate, his father was a vocal supporter of the civil rights legislation, was one of the few Southern politicians to vote in favor of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Al Gore lied, and all ChatGPT could do was retrieve that speech and repeat and reinforce that lie. And that is the danger of ChatGPT. It can only repeat and reinforce the totality of mankind's lies. It can rewrite history and perpetuate political falsehoods, but it's given great deference and authority because it's technology. I mean, after all, it must be true because it's on the internet. Imagine what ChatGPT would write about the COVID-19 pandemic if it were directed to certain pro-government sites or pro-big pharma sites. Victor Davis Hanson, a well-known conservative journalist, writes, artificial intelligence will simply reflect and magnify the mindset and ideology of its creators and impress those values upon the rest of us. Unquote. So this is not about ChatGPT having its own intelligence. It's not even about it having its own artificial intelligence. It's really just about telling you the mind of the creators. Now, the fact that people lie and deceive and promote false, ungodly ideology on the internet is nothing new. But AI is able to reinforce the lie. And that's the danger. 3 weeks ago, Elon Musk sat down with Tucker Carlson for an interview about ChatGPT and AI. Most people who are up on the news have already seen this interview. What was interesting was that Elon Musk said that AI has the potential for good, but also has a great potential for evil. So therefore, AI should be regulated by the government like we regulate drugs and food. But of course, that's problematic. I mean, is the government supposed to be regulating ideas? And for the government to regulate AI, probably that would be the real danger. The danger Elon pointed out was, as I said earlier, not that AI is going to turn us all into batteries, like on the Matrix. The danger is the propaganda that AI can create. The way it can replicate public opinion, the way it can influence and convince people, says Elon Musk. And then Elon shared that he helped to create the company OpenAI, but has since left that organization. But in the early days, he was working on this with Larry Page, who became the CEO of Google and is now the CEO of Google's parent company, Alphabet. And Elon Musk said that when he pointed out the dangers of AI to Larry Page, Page accused Elon Musk of being a speciesist. In other words, someone who favors the human species over other species, such as AI. Well, that's an interesting accusation. But the more interesting point is that Larry Page told Elon that he wants to build or create a digital God. What does he mean by that? Well, he means a all-powerful, all-knowing machine that people will use, will depend on, and will ultimately venerate. Why build a digital God? Well, it gives the creators fame. It gives the creators power, control, and money. Just like Google right now has monopoly control over searches on the internet. So the companies will pay handsomely to have Google prioritize their product. So isn't this telling? Just like at the Tower of Babel, these people do not believe they should limit themselves in regard to their control. In another interview Elon Musk had with Bill Maher, Musk again warned that AI can be dangerous. And Bill Maher pointed out that people like the computer scientist, futurist Ray Kurzweil do not think AI is going to be a problem at all. To which Musk replied that Kurzweil feels that way because he wants to live forever. And he, like many others, quote, see AI as the only way to that. Or digital superintelligence as the only way, or the only thing that can figure out how to get them to live forever. Quote, I think Kurzweil is in that category, so he would prefer to have AI, artificial general intelligence, than not, because he couldn't figure out longevity. Unquote. So in this we see much of the motivation behind the science, why people want this digital God. They put their hope of deliverance in the science and in this digital God. So in spiritual terms, the emphasis is on looking to man for deliverance or salvation. Like Cain, we've gone out from the presence of the Lord and built for ourselves our own city east of Eden in the land of Nod. But true salvation comes by turning back to God for deliverance, turning back to God to find everything man is wrongfully seeking in himself. In The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, a 1978-1980s novel, the people of the universe build a giant supercomputer. Quote, the great computer, supercomputer Deep Thought, is the most powerful computer ever built, with one exception. It was designed by hyper-intelligent pan-dimensional beings who wanted to know the answer to life, the universe, and everything. Its creators annoyed a fair few philosophers who felt that it was taking over their turf. Well, after working on the problem for 7.5 million years, the computer finally had the answer. And so all the representatives of the various planets gathered to hear the answer. And with every ear listening intently, the computer announced that the answer is 42. And everyone was disappointed, to say the least. Now, the number 42 has some very interesting mathematical properties, but it's not the answer to life. And that's the humor in the piece. A digital machine cannot provide the real answers that we're looking for, but God can. The Gospel of John, chapter 1. In the beginning was the Word, the Logos, he who spoke the worlds into existence, in Genesis 1:1. And the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And the Word was made flesh, Jesus Christ, God incarnate. And he dwelt among us, and we saw his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. In him is life, and the life was the light of men. Jesus Christ is who we need to look to for the answers, not a digital God. One more example, The Wizard of Oz. Remember Dorothy and the Lion, the Scarecrow, and the Tin Man have an audience with the great and powerful Oz. And they're greeted with a large projection, the image of a man, loud, breathing out smoke and fire, very intimidating. But Toto, the dog, pulls back the curtain, and there's only a weak, insecure, decrepit old man, pulling levers and wires to make his words sound more authoritative. Well, that's AI, that's ChatGPT. It's simply the puffed up version of man himself. It's simply the combined stupidity and the hubris of man. There's nothing wrong with technology except when people attribute to it more than it is, or when they use it to control or monopolize power. Let me close with some verses in this regard. Isaiah chapter 2, verse 22. Stop regarding man, whose breath of life is in his nostrils, for why should he be esteemed? Psalm chapter 62, verse 9. Men of low degree are only vanity, and men of rank are a lie. In the balance they go up, they are together lighter than breath. Jeremiah 17:5. Thus saith the Lord, curses the man who trusts in mankind and makes flesh his strength, and whose heart turns away from the Lord. And 1 Corinthians 1:20. Where is the wise man? Where's the scribe? Where's the debater of this age? Where are they? Well, they're actually all dead. Has not God made foolish the wisdom of this world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world through its wisdom didn't come to know God, didn't come to have a resurrection for that matter. So God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. Well, that concludes the program. This is video number 257, but actually, this is program 600. And that's going to have to be a milestone, because at doing one program a week, it's going to take 8 years before I get to program number 1000. So I'm going to celebrate program number 600. Actually, given the prophetic significance of this topic, this is really a good topic for program 600. Like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and may Jesus Christ reign.